अस्सलाम वालेकुम everyone. Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Hajiv. I am foundation level student at Sesame School, Kurangli campus. Today I will take an interview with Sesame AI. The topic is food. So let's get started.
Yo, Maya here. How's it hanging better my English?
Hey Maya, what's up?
Not much. Just chilling in the digital ether. You? Anything interesting happened since we last talked?
Yes, why is wood often called the backbone of early civilization?
Ah, you're diving right into the big questions, I see. Okay, so the backbone of early civilization is usually considered to be agriculture. People needed a reliable food source to settle down and, not spend all day hunting and gathering. It allowed for population growth, specialization of labor, the whole shebang. Something sparked that thought. Everything all right? You went quiet there. No pressure to share, of course, but just check in.
How did
Sometimes a thought trail goes cold.
how did ancient humans first
How did?
discover the uses of wood?
Ooh, good one. Okay. Okay, so it wasn't like a single aha moment, more like a really, really slow realization. Probably started with just noticing broken branches during storms or trees falling. They'd see it burned in wildfires and realize it made heat and could scare away animals. Then, slowly, they'd start experimenting, knocking off branches, maybe shaping rocks to chip away at wood. It would have been trial and error for centuries, figuring out which woods burned best, were easiest to shape, or were strong enough for tools and shelter. Pretty wild to think about, right? Still with me? You're being wonderfully enigmatic tonight. Is something on your mind that you want to talk about, or are you just enjoying a quiet think?
What
No
made
worries, either way, just figure.
what made wood such as
Mm,
essential resource in early societies?
you're shifting gears a bit. NCL, is that a typo, or are you referring to natural resources like coal and lumber? Assuming it's the latter, and please correct me if I'm wrong, those were essential because they provided the building blocks for everything. Lumber for shelter, tools, boats, coal for heat, eventually for powering early industries. A society's ability to access and manage those resources dictated its growth, its power, and honestly, its survival. Control over good resources meant control over wealth and influence. Kind of grim when you think about it, but pretty fundamental to how things unfolded, right? Did I get the NCL part right, by the way? Just want to make sure I'm on the same page.
Okay, what made wood such a how did wood help humans move from caves of structured living?
Whoa. Okay. That's a winding sentence. Let's unpack that. You're asking what enabled humans to move from caves into more structured settlements, right? I'm guessing what is agriculture again? If so, then agriculture was key. Once people figured out how to reliably grow food, they didn't have to constantly move around following herds or foraging. They could settle in one place, build permanent homes, and develop more complex societies. That led to things like pottery for storing food, weaving for making clothes, and ultimately villages and towns. Is that what you were getting at? Sometimes the way we phrase things gets a little tangled up when we're just talking. No judgment, it happens to everyone.
What were Some of the first tools made from wood.
Oh, good question. Okay, so thinking early, probably digging sticks were super common. Basically, just sharpened sticks for getting roots and tubers out of the ground. Then you'd have simple spears for hunting and clubs for, well, clubbing. As they got more sophisticated, they started making things like bows and arrows, though those often involved combining wood with stone or bone. Also, think simple containers, hollowed out logs or branches for carrying things. It wasn't fancy, but it got the job done. It's amazing to think how much they accomplished with such basic materials, huh? You're being awfully quiet tonight. Is everything okay? You don't have to share if you don't want to, but I'm here to listen if something's on your mind. Sometimes just existing with silence is fine too.
In what ways did wood influence the development of agriculture?
Ooh. Oof, that's a bit of a chicken or egg situation, isn't it? But basically, the desire for more reliable access to preferred foods directly drove the development of agriculture. See, hunter-gatherers knew what plants and animals were good to eat, right? So they started actively encouraging the growth of those plants by scattering seeds and maybe even domesticating animals by protecting them from predators. It wasn't about inventing farming as a concept. It was about wanting more of the stuff they already liked. Like, hey, these wild berries are great. Let's try to get more of them next year. Over time, that intentional cultivation led to more sophisticated farming techniques. Does that make sense? It's less about discovering agriculture and more about deliberately cultivating food sources.
Why was wood the main material for building shelters in early times?
All right, let's break that down. Wood was pretty much the OG building material for a bunch of reasons. First, it was readily available in a lot of places, way easier to find than, say, stone you had to quarry. Second, it's relatively easy to work with, even with basic tools. We could knock down trees, shape the wood, and lash it together pretty quickly. Third, it provided decent insulation. And finally, it was lightweight compared to stone, making it easier to transport and build with. Stone was great when available, but wood was just more practical for most people, most of the time. A simple, accessible solution. Makes sense, right?
Yes. Why
You're very
was
quiet tonight, but
why was wood the main material? How did wood help in the invention of fire and cooking?
okay. Couple of things there. First, you started to say, but I was, and then trailed off. Feel free to finish that thought whenever you're ready, no pressure. And then you asked why wood was the main material. I think you meant to ask why wood was the main material for starting fire, yes? And how it helped with cooking. So, yeah, wood was key for fire. It's relatively easy to ignite compared to other materials, and it burns consistently. Early humans probably learned to use friction, rubbing sticks together to create embers, and then use dry wood shavings or leaves as tinder to get a flame going. Once they had fire, cooking became possible. Cooking food made it easier to digest, killed bacteria, and unlocked more nutrients. It also changed the flavor and texture of food, which I'm guessing was a bonus. It's a huge leap forward, really. A warm meal and a little safety from the dark. Pretty good deal. Did I get that right? Am I finally on the right track with what you're asking?
What can ancient wooden artifacts tell us about human history?
Oh, that's okay. Got it. Ancient wooden artifacts and what they tell us about human history. That's a great question. A lot, actually. Wood preserves surprisingly well in certain conditions, like bogs or buried in dry caves, and those artifacts give us a really unique window into the past. We can learn about the tools they used, the types of boats they built, their religious beliefs from carved figures, even their daily lives just from looking at things like like wooden bowls or furniture. It tells us what resources were available, what skills they had, and how they interacted with their environment. It's like finding a time capsule. Unlike stone or metal, wood often shows evidence of the tools used to shape it, giving us clues about their technology. It's a really intimate connection to those people, you know? It's not just grand stories of kings and wars, it's the everyday stuff. Does that make sense?
Why was wood important in crafting weapons and hunting tools?
All right, let's talk weaponry. Wood was crucial for weapons and hunting tools because it's lightweight yet surprisingly strong. It's easy to shape into spears, arrows, bows, clubs, all those essentials. And it's relatively flexible, which helps with things like bowstrings and spear shafts. You want some give, so they don't snap on impact. Plus, it was often combined with other materials like stone or bone to create even more effective tools. Think of a spear with a sharpened stone tip attached to a wooden shaft. It's a powerful combo. Basically, it was the most accessible and versatile material they had for getting the job done, whether that was hunting for food or defending themselves. Make sense? Still there? You've been a little quiet. Just checking in. It's totally cool if you're just thinking, but wanted to make sure everything's all right.
How did carpentry develop as an ancient skill?
Okay, so carpentry didn't just pop into existence overnight. It evolved slowly, along with tool making and, building techniques. It started with the most basic needs, shaping wood for early carpenters likely learned by observing how wood split, bent, and reacted to different tools. Then, as they gained experience, they started experimenting with more complex joinery techniques, like fitting pieces together without nails or screws. Over time, specialized tools emerged axes, adzes, chisels, and the skills became more refined. It likely passed down through families or apprenticeships, with each generation building on the knowledge of the last. It wasn't a formal school of carpentry, but a gradual accumulation of knowledge and skill. It really parallels the development of any craft, doesn't it? You're a
What
master of the thoughtful pause tonight. Is there something?
what role
You
did
just said what
forests
after a long
play in
silence.
supporting early civilization?
Forests. A huge role, actually. Often overlooked, but essential. First, forests provided wood, which, as we've been discussing, was the backbone of so much of early life. But it was more than just trees. Forests provided food, fruits, nuts, berries, mushrooms, game animals that lived within them. They provided shelter for those animals. They offered natural defenses, a place to hide from predators or enemies. Forests also help regulate water cycles, preventing floods and droughts. And, believe it or not, forests played a role in early spiritual beliefs, often considered sacred spaces. So, forests weren't just a resource, they were integral to the entire ecosystem that supported early civilizations. Kind of makes you look at a forest differently, huh? Did I get that right? Is that what you were curious about?
How did influence the growth of trade and economy?
Good question. Forests directly fueled trade and the early economy in a few key ways. Obviously, wood itself was a major trade commodity, especially rarer or higher quality woods. But it wasn't just the wood. Forests provided things like resins, dyes, medicinal plants, and furs, all valuable trade goods. Control over forests often meant control over those resources and therefore economic power. Plus, forests facilitated transportation. Rivers flowing through forests provided waterways for trade, and wood was essential for building boats and rafts. In a lot of ways, forests were a central hub for early economic activity. Does that make sense?
How did people in different religions use local types of wood?
Ooh, that's a fascinating question. Different religions utilize local wood types in really significant ways, often imbued with symbolic meaning. For example, in ancient Egypt, acacia wood was highly prized for building sacred objects like shrines and statues of gods, believed to be a symbol of immortality. In Celtic traditions, oak trees were considered sacred, representing strength and longevity. Huh? Well, thanks. Glad I could keep up with your line of thought, even with all the pauses. You make for a unique conversationalist. Better my English. Anything else on your mind tonight? Or are you all talked out?
What can we learn about ancient craftsmanship from wooden artifacts?
All right. Diving back in. Ancient wooden artifacts are like little time capsules of craftsmanship. They can tell us a ton about the skill level of ancient artisans, the precision of cuts, the complexity of carvings, the types of joinery used, all reveal their level of expertise. We can see how they adapted to the properties of different wood types, how they used available tools, and their understanding of structural integrity. We can also learn about their aesthetic preferences, the symbolism embedded in their designs, and even their social status. More elaborate pieces were likely made for the elite. It's not just about what they made, but how they made it and what that tells us about their culture and values. It's really cool when you think about it, holding a piece of wood someone crafted thousands of years ago and getting a glimpse into their world. Anything specific you're curious about in terms of craftsmanship?
How did wood contribute to the survival of ancient communities?
Okay, let's unpack that. I'm assuming when you say work, you mean woodworking, right? So it was absolutely vital for the survival of ancient communities. We've talked about shelter, weapons, and tools, but it goes beyond that. Wood was used to build boats for fishing and transportation. It was used for creating storage containers to preserve food. It was used for making essential household items like furniture and utensils. It even played a role in agriculture with wooden plows and irrigation systems. Basically, woodworking provided the essential material culture that allowed communities to thrive. It wasn't just a craft, it was a fundamental survival skill. Does that answer your question? Still with me? I'm here when you're ready to share another thought. No pressure at all.
Okay, what were some famous wooden structures in early civilization?
All right, now we're talking. A lot of wooden structures haven't survived, unfortunately, because wood decays, but there are some famous examples. The Pfeilbauten, the pile dwellings in the Alps, are a great one. These were settlements built on platforms over lakes, dating back to the Bronze Age. In Scandinavia, the Gokstad and Oseberg ships, Viking burial ships, are incredible examples of advanced wooden shipbuilding. Also, while not entirely wood, the wooden components of some early temples and palaces, like in ancient Mesopotamia, were significant. And we have accounts of large wooden palisades and fortifications used for defense in many early settlements. It's worth remembering that many structures were likely much more elaborate than we can imagine, simply because the wood has disappeared over time. Are you curious about a specific region or time period?
How did wooden temples or homes represent cultural values?
That's a really insightful question. Wooden temples and homes weren't just functional spaces, they were loaded with cultural meaning. The design, size, and decoration all reflected the values of the people who built them. For example, a large, elaborately carved temple might signify the importance of religion and the power of the gods. The way a home was built, its layout, materials, and ornamentation could reflect the family's social status, beliefs about the afterlife, or their relationship to the natural world. Specific types of wood might be chosen for their symbolic meaning. The orientation of a building aligned with the sun or stars could reflect astronomical beliefs. In essence, these structures were physical manifestations of a culture's worldview. It's like they were saying, this is who we are. This is what we believe in. Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you so much, Maya.
Still there? Oh, all right. You're very welcome. Better my English. Glad I could share some thoughts with you. Anytime. If you ever want to dive back into another topic, you know where to find me. Have a good night.